Welcome, you're watching Vox News, your daily evening news with Rita Kamkumo. Our headlines today. South African president has announced a historical 500 billion rand plan in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Ghanaian factory workers are racing to meet the 3.6 million face mask production target in support of health workers. Cameroonian authorities admit the army's role in the Ngarbuh Massacre of February.
We are announcing
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced on Tuesday a massive COVID-19 response plan to support the most vulnerable people and companies dealing with the pandemic.
We are announcing this evening a massive social and economic support package of 500 billion rand.
The head of state indicated that of the 500 billion rands, or $26.3 billion allocated to the recovery plan, 130 billion are from the current budget, for which priorities were established. On the social level, a total of 50 billion rands will be allocated to the most vulnerable populations who will receive an increase in their social benefits for 6 months to ensure their subsistence.
Another significant area that requires massive additional expenditure is the relief of hunger and social distress in our communities across the country. We recognize that food distribution capacity of the government is not adequate to meet the huge need that has arisen since the start of the epidemic.
The remaining 370 billion rounds will come from international partners and international financial institutions. This plan shall help more than 700,000 companies and over 3 million employees. For the economic side, the government will offer 200 billion rands, or $10.5 million of loan guarantees to companies to cover their operating costs, such as salaries, rents, and payment of suppliers. The president of the most affected country in sub-Saharan Africa by the pandemic stressed that the scale of the emergency program is historic for the first industrial power of the African continent. Government measures continue in Ivory Coast, where Prime Minister Amadou Coulibaly announced on Wednesday to local press that the special bonuses promised to healthcare workers and defense and security forces will be paid by the end of the month. The Prime Minister clarified that this allowance will be paid until the government declares the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. In an address to the nation on the 23rd of March, President Alassane Ouattara declared a state of emergency throughout the national territory to stop the spread of coronavirus in the country. He also announced special bonuses for medical staff and security forces. In Ghana, workers at a factory in the country's capital, Accra, are racing to meet the government's target of producing 3.6 million face masks domestically by the end of April.
We've been thinking of how best to get into the market with the best that we have. We're looking at various products that do well on the market. And then this happened. I mean, it's a very unfortunate situation, the pandemic, but it's opened doors, other doors that we never considered. Because really, the PPE will always be needed. We are learning new lessons about keeping people safe.
These masks are produced by 4 local organizations in support of medical staff who are fighting the battle against coronavirus and for the general public.
These masks, I'm wearing one of them, give the protection that global standards demand. And we're going beyond that. We're going to be producing another set, which we call the medicals, for those on the front line, dealing with those who are really ill. They're all very excited and they know they're doing a good thing. And they're also happy to have jobs at this time where others are losing their jobs.
On Monday, Ghana became the first country in Africa to lift the lockdown imposed in the past 3 weeks because the measure was severely impacting the poor and because testing has improved, according to President Nana Akufo-Addo. On the political arena in Guinea, Amadou Damaro Camara, a close friend of President Alpha Condé, was elected president of the National Assembly on Tuesday with 98 votes in favor against 6 for his opponent Mohamed Lamine Kaba, following the controversial elections of the 22nd of March and in the absence of the main leaders of the opposition and foreign diplomats.
Je sais et je mesure
I know and I appreciate the magnitude of my responsibilities. But I do not doubt for a moment that with your support, that together in a participatory manner, we will meet the challenges that we face from this point on. We may have a minority in the assembly, but we can also really give our opinion, and when we don't agree on something, we can choose to refuse or accept, and ultimately the people of Guinea will be there to judge.
The Rally of the People of Guinea, the party of the head of state, and Mr. Damaro Camara has 79 seats out of 114 at the National Assembly.
It's a decision of the state which responds, I imagine, to the concern to make the state function effectively, because the National Assembly is the second most important institution of the Republic and must therefore take an active part in the fight against COVID.
Deputies who were wearing face masks kept 2 empty seats among each other as a preventive measure against the spread of coronavirus.
We were reassured by the sanitary measures taken, particularly the disinfection of the rooms, of the premises, but also all the sanitary measures including masks, which are now mandatory.
Opposition Selou Dalen Diallo had called for a boycott of the vote and denounced a ploy by President Condé to obtain a third mandate, despite the 2010 constitution. The Cameroonian presidency admitted on Tuesday that 13 civilians, including 10 children, had been killed by 3 soldiers and auxiliaries in an Anglophone separatist village in the northwest in mid-February. A massacre in which Yaoundé had previously denied any responsibility for its army. Under international pressure, President Paul Biya had demanded the opening of an investigation into the killing, the first findings of which were delivered on Tuesday evening. President Biya ordered the arrest of 1 sergeant, a police officer, and 1 soldier, as well as 10 of the unidentified militiamen involved in the massacre, and judicial proceedings against the 3 main protagonists who will appear before Yaoundé's military court. The head of state ordered dignified tributes for the deceased and compensations for the families of the victims. In Mozambique, 52 young civilians were killed on the 7th of April in a village in the extreme north of the country during an attack carried out by jihadist groups which have been operating in the region for more than 2 years. Police spokesman Orlando Mudumane said the massacre took place in the village of Sisasi in the district of Mudumbe after the youth refused to join the ranks of the Islamists. Al-Shabaab, the jihadist group responsible for this attack, has been operating since October 2017 in the Muslim-majority province of Cabo Delgado, where it has multiplied deadly operations against civilian populations and security forces. In Chad, following the mysterious death of some of the Boko Haram members who were put in prison in N'Djamena last week after the recent military operation against the jihadist group, an investigation was initiated. According to public prosecutor Yusuf Tom, some deceased prisoners had burnt lungs.
We did a head count. We found that only 44 of 58 prisoners were actually called back to God under circumstances we don't know about. We have automatically decided to open a judicial inquiry to determine the cause of this mass death of inmates. So far, the medical examiner is still going with the examinations, but we already have autopsy pictures. Some of the lungs are burnt. As the bodies were rotting, we couldn't keep them, and the City Hall Health Department, along with the other authorities, decided to proceed with the burial of 40 bodies, and the medical examiner decided to take a sample of 4 bodies to do his autopsy.
A décidé de prendre un échantillon 4 corps pour faire son autopsie.
The prisoners were arrested during a vast operation launched by Chadian President Idriss Déby Itno at the end of March against jihadist groups who were multiplying attacks in the Lake Chad region. In Kenya, villagers had no choice but to leave their homes for higher ground after overnight regional flooding caused the evacuation of the village of Kisumu in the western part of the country.
I am now at the 83rd year of my life. A flood of similar nature only happened in 1961, but this one of today, we did not expect we will see a flood like this. The lower western side of Kano and the eastern part of Kano are covered by flood waters that almost killed our children at midnight.
While homes have been destroyed, some villagers fear about becoming even more exposed to the new coronavirus.
We were observing all the WHO regulations on coronavirus, but now that we have been driven out of our homes by the floods, I fear now that we are going to get it. It will now kill us. Everything went with the waters, all my clothing, even the shoes went, all are gone and nothing is left.
The meteorological department told the population that they should expect more precipitation throughout the week. It is not the first time that the Kisumu region is suffering from flooding due to its flat terrain. To date, other areas have also reported massive destruction caused by landslides and flooding caused by heavy rains. The Red Cross reported on Twitter that families were displaced and that heavy rain wreaked havoc in the Nyondo, Kisumu Central and Nyaka regions. The organization is carrying out a needs assessment, but flooded roads are delaying progress. Flooding continues to wreak havoc on the continent. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, local officials announced on Tuesday that at least 46 people died in the recent floods in Uvira, in the eastern part of the country, where many others are missing or injured. Thousands of people were affected by heavy rains on Thursday and Saturday, with floods that destroyed 15,000 houses. The central government of Kinshasa has sent a strong delegation despite confinement measures. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees is working with local authorities and partners to assist 80,000 people affected by the floods immediately. That's it for today. Thank you for watching Vox News.